My name is John Passfield, and I'm going to read from my Babe Ruth novel. I'm calling this particular reading Babe Ruth Video to the Media Myth. Now, here's the cover of the novel Out of the Park, The Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield. The painting was made from a photograph of Babe Ruth, and it's by Prashant Miranda, a Toronto artist. So I'd like to give him credit for that. Let me read from the back cover, the summary of the entire novel. On October 1st, 1932, an aging Babe Ruth stands at the plate in Wrigley Field, Chicago, and grins at the shouts of a raging, hostile crowd. His knees ache, but his focus is still on the ball. He fights off a swarm of thoughts. His first year as a Yankee. His record of 60 home runs, in the past now, of course. His 2 wives. His money problems. A million questions about when he's going to hang up his glove. He's looking for his next big hit to prove that he still belongs in the game. The pitcher's eyes are burning. The crowd is a frenzied roar. He raises his arm and points at the center field fence. And I mentioned in a previous video that this is a King Lear moment. There are these iconic moments in serious literature, and King Lear on the heath being pelted by the rain and buffeted by the wind is one of them. But it's a man at a stage in his life where he's under pressure. He's having a very exciting, agitated present moment, standing out in the storm. But it isn't just the wind and the rain that's coming at him. It's all of his memories, all of his thoughts, all of his experiences. And he's trying to sort them out in order to kind of survive the moment and figure out where to go from here. So I put Babe Ruth in that same position. Of course, it came out of the historical record, right? But I saw the parallel. So I'd like to mention that. I'm calling this the media myth. Other possible titles were the media as myth maker. The media gives us lots of information. They also give us ideas. They give us idea patterns. The media asks us to do our thinking along those patterns. So the media as myth maker, media giving us idea patterns by which to think. Well, what is a myth? Well, a myth is an idea pattern into which we can fit information. If you see a car accident, you take that information, person went through a red light, you fit it into the idea pattern of the law, right? You should stop at a red light. So you can interpret that. Oh, I see which person was guilty. Macbeth stabs King Duncan to death. Well, we have a religious idea pattern, a myth in our mind, which helps us interpret that. Thou shalt not kill, and so on. But we also have personal myths. And so we're under bombardment, as is King Lear, as is Babe Ruth, every day to listen to the information that the media provides us with, but also to think along the lines that the media would like us to think with, to interpret all the information according to these patterns that they offer to us. Now, the structure of the novel, 16 chapters. There are 3 rotating cycles. I picked 1920, when he was a first-year Yankee. Is he going to be the phenomenon that I hoped he would be? He had some troubles, but you'll see over the 5 chapters how that works out. 1927, Lou Gehrig gets ahead of him in the home run race as he's a little too old, washed up and so on, has some troubles, but he comes through in that one. You already know perhaps that he hit the 60 home runs. And then, of course, the outer frame of the whole novel, this present moment in 1932, when the Chicago fans are telling him he's washed up and a bum and should retire, and he points to the center field fence, and the novel shows us how that comes out. So each chapter has many levels of thought, from the most conscious, he's always that bad, to the most subconscious. He thinks of his wives, his rivals, his manager, the media, the science of hitting, and many, many more. And the question is, does all this thinking help or hurt? Well, it might hurt if he does too much thinking when he should be concentrating on the bad. But what about his life? If he doesn't do enough thinking about his life, is he going to live his life in the best way possible? So I'm focusing on just one level of thought in this particular reading, and that level is going to be the level of the media. The media and how it seeks to influence you and I. The media, how it seeks to influence Babe Ruth in his thinking. So as I mentioned, this reading will isolate and focus on the imagery of the media coverage of the Babe Ruth phenomenon. Well, the media is one of the major sources of imagery by which we think or are asked to think, pressured to think, encouraged to think. We think both in prose and in imagery. Some of the imagery of our thoughts is self-generated, and some of the imagery of our thoughts is offered to our minds by outside sources. We are sometimes bullied and sometimes seduced by these image forces in our lives. One of the most powerful sources of imagery in our lives, and therefore in our minds, is the imagery which is promoted by the media. In this video, I'd like to isolate a media imagery minor cycle in the mind of the main character, Babe Ruth. We can wonder as we read how he's responding to such imagery, for good or for ill. So I'm only going to read from 3 chapters. There are 16 chapters in the novel. Arbitrarily, I thought, well, I'll just go to the middle of the novel. The media cycle runs through all 16 chapters. In each case, the thought of Babe Ruth and then a media quotation that is seeking to have influence on his mind. So I'm starting with chapter 8, which I'll just have a look at here. It's page 109. So the title of chapter 8 is Spring 3. So I thought of 1920 as the spring of his career. The Polo Grounds, New York, July 19th, 1920. Well, the house that Ruth built, Yankee Stadium, was not built in 1920. He's the guy who built it in metaphorical terms. So he played his early games in New York in the Polo Grounds. Here's the setup for that chapter. Starting out fresh and new, working myself into the groove. Had a lot of success in Boston, but New York is the biggest town in the whole wide world. Figuring out if I could play in the biggest town, in the toughest league, in the greatest game. Calling on everything I got inside me to help me do it. Taking my first year as a Yankee, one hit at a time. Well, that's the setup for the entire chapter. Here's isolating the media cycle in the chapter, in the mind of Babe Ruth. Them newspaper guys are amazing. You can never tell what they're going to write next. I don't even have to buy me a newspaper. People read them quotes whether I want to hear them or not. Here's one of the quotes. Those gifts that come with the greatest fanfare are often the gifts that are doomed to disappoint. The Yankee owners' gift to their fans has come with more fanfare than the Herald Angels. But Babe Ruth will pop up and strike out too often to be of any value to his team. So there's a media thought that Babe Ruth can take seriously or not. He's not going to be any good. Here's another one, same page 111. When you're a ball player, them newspaper guys praise everything you do. I can't get away from the news. People are always reading me them quotes that the newspapers say. And here's another one. We are living in historic times. Perhaps no one now living will ever see such a thing again. The crowd went quite mad today as they witnessed something no other people has ever seen before. The king of clout put on a show today that confirms Babe Ruth as the greatest showman of these times. Well, does the media exaggerate? I guess is one of the questions. How do we evaluate the media? Certainly those were 2 extremes when the media was talking about Babe Ruth. Here are 2 more media quotations from that chapter, his first year as a Yankee, 1920. Ignorance is the fuel that feeds the raging conflagration that is the skyward soaring reputation of the newest baseball demigod. The crowd knows nothing of baseball. The proof is in the pudding. They even cheer Babe Ruth when he strikes out. And then another media comment, which he doesn't read, but people read them to him, eh? Nouns and adjectives are panting with exhaustion as frantic sports writers lash themselves into an ever-growing frenzy of comparison. The Boston Babe has become a baseball idol, such as the game's history has not known. He is the whole works, the main squeeze, the big attraction. Well, many thoughts in that chapter, chapter 8, but I've isolated the media. Here's his last thought. Standing in the batter's box and waiting for a pitch that'll give me a chance to explode. So the struggle then is to focus, to concentrate, to somehow put all of these forces that seek to influence us into perspective. Chapter 9, Summer 3. I thought of 1927 as summer, though he was aging a bit, but still in his prime. As the 60 homers proved, eh? Yankee Stadium, New York, September 30th, 1927. Here's a setup for this chapter. Doing pretty good for myself. Feeling good about being on top. Feeling fit, and strong, and powerful. Figuring I know who I am and what I've done and what I can do. None of these injuries, aches, and pains ain't going to stop me. Showing them other hitters what it is to be on top. And then isolating the media passages. Page 127 in the book. Them newspaper guys write all the worst things they can think of to say. I tell people I don't read the newspapers, but that don't stop them. People read me them quotes whether I want to hear them or not. Another quote. Our experience of ancient history tells us that nothing, no matter how glorious, is guaranteed to last for all time. It is the jealousy of the gods that seems to account for the change of the seasons. An historical era has been superseded while we have slept. Babe Ruth has had his day. Just one colossus strides the baseball world this morning, Mr. Henry Louis Gehrig, and no one else. I'd like to read that about yourself in the newspaper in the morning, right? Most of us aren't being commented on publicly. Here's another quotation. Them newspaper guys are sure being nice to me. Don't matter whether I read about myself or not. People are always reading me them quotes that the newspapers say. And here's another one. If you are a baseball fan in search of a hero that you can take to the bank, here let me give my solemn oath that there is one hero whose feet are not made of the proverbial clay, whose bandwagon is not made of tinkling brass. I don't trust many things in sport, but I trust Babe Ruth. Well, let's go to pages 139 and 40, still in this 1927 chapter, for two more quotations. There are more in the chapters and many more thoughts on other topics in the chapters, but I'm focusing on the media. If heaven is truly the promised land, then I expect to find Ty Cobb's angel sitting on a diamond-shaped cloud and explaining to Babe Ruth's angel a lesson that Ruth would never allow himself to listen to while down here on earth. Ruth's angel will suffer great remorse when he realizes that if he had shortened up his swing, he would have had more hits, fewer strikeouts, and a better average. Well, by what terms do we evaluate ourselves? Did Babe Ruth want more hits, fewer strikeouts, and a better average? Or did he want more home runs? Each of us, in the face of all these suggestions from the world outside us as to how to evaluate ourselves, by what criteria we should judge ourselves and our actions, we have to figure out whether they're right or whether we should reject them and decide on our own criteria. Page 140. If Babe Ruth had lived in Roman times, he would have shaken the ancient Colosseum to its very foundations, a fact that was demonstrated to all and sundry in our modern Colosseum here today. A wave of thunder rolled down from the bleachers and across the field as the mighty Babe galloped around the base path, and the stands became one tumultuous chorus of applause. Well, hard to keep your head when all these things are being said about you. Here's the last passage in that 1927 chapter. Standing in the batter's box and knowing that the next one ain't going to get by me no matter what. So the attempt to focus amid this bombardment of information, bombardment of information seeking to be influential imagery in the mind. Chapter 10, Autumn 4, Wrigley Field, Chicago, October 1st, 1932. Here's the setup of the chapter. Getting a little older. Figuring I got to do something soon. relying on tape and rub-downs and liniment to get me through, dragging an old body around and shrugging off all the catcalls. Loving the game so much, I forced myself to keep on going, looking for the next big hit to prove that I'm still in the game. Then on page 145, media as a focus. Them newspapers is pretty tough on an old guy. You'd think they'd give an old guy credit for at least trying. That ain't never enough. People read me them quotes whether I want to hear 'em or not. It is to be lamented that Babe Ruth did not play baseball at a university or a college. There's no Harvard, Princeton, or Columbia in the strategy with which the mighty slugger approaches the challenges of the diamond. Ruth knows nothing of the finesse of the game. Advancing the runner is a mystery to him. Another media report. Contrary to popular misconception, there are not 7 wonders of the world, but a precious 8. For the price of a streetcar ride and a ticket of admission, you can see the 8th wonder at any home game of the New York Yankees. More dazzling than the aurora borealis, generating more energy than Niagara Falls, a brighter meteor in the firmament than the light of the sun itself, Babe Ruth is the greatest hitter that anyone in baseball has ever seen. You might ask yourself whether the sun is a meteor, but I'm sure you can believe it because here it is in the media. Lastly, in terms of this reading, 156-57, I'm going to read. Here are 2 more media commentaries about Babe Ruth. When the barbarians entered Rome, the people fled in fear of those who would destroy every vestige of civilized living. Conversely, we have a barbarian in our midst, and the people cheer him. The desecration of the refined sport of baseball has been met with applause for the great destroyer. Babe Ruth is to blame for the relegation of inside baseball to the rubbish heap of the past. Well, inside baseball was the advancing of the runner 1 base at a time, say with a bunt or a steal, and the whole team working to get 1 run. Ruth's baseball was to stand at the plate, hit a home run. If there were 3 men on base, of course, then that would be the 4th. You'd get 4 home runs out of that. It was a whole different way of baseball. But was he a barbarian? Well, someone in the media thinks so. 157. It is problematical as to whether James M. Barrie had ever seen a game of baseball when he created the wonderful world of Never Never Land. Had he done so, he could have done worse than take his inspiration for the spirit of Peter Pan from the timeless home run hitter of our national game. Babe Ruth is, and ever will be, a big-hearted, smiling, generous kid, a boy who has never grown up. Well, take that into your mind and think about it. If someone says you're just a big kid who's never grown up, how true is that, eh? We're always being influenced to think about ourselves by other people in certain ways. The last line of that chapter, standing in the batter's box and waiting for the perfect one to hit. So the question then is, at what level of his mind is he processing all of this imagery? Is he being influenced in the way these people think he should be to act upon their thoughts, their ideas? They're creating myths about Babe Ruth, and he's either buying into these myths or rejecting them, which means he's creating a myth of his own. He's creating a myth of his own, whether he's fitting some of these ideas into his myth or not. That's the way the mind works. So that's the reading, and in a moment I'll make a conclusion to this particular video. In conclusion, I'd like to read a passage from one of my notes. I'll tell you how you can read more of this sort of thing, my note making, for free. But first, here's the reading. Babe Ruth was a baseball player who transformed the game that he played. He came into baseball in an era of what was called inside baseball, a game which employed the multiple skills of a whole team of players at almost every facet of the game in order to outscore an opposing team by a narrow margin. He transformed the game into one in which a single player could undermine all of the painstaking work of a whole team of players by hitting one pitch out of the park, the title of the novel, out of the park, and sending the score higher by anywhere from 1 to 4 runs, depending on how many players were on base. In doing so, Babe Ruth came to dominate the whole sport of baseball and to have an impact on the culture of his age. So a lot of people point to 1927, the 60 home runs, Lindbergh flying the Atlantic and so on, 2 years before the crash of 29. Point to that as a real turning point in society and social thinking. So worth considering. A couple of websites. It's on, the book is on Amazon. I'll just hold up one last time. Out of the Park, The Cogitations of Babe Ruth, a novel by John Passfield, available on Amazon, available on my website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. You click on notebooks and then go down to the Babe Ruth icon. There's a whole book for free of my notes as I was planning, structuring, and writing the novel. If you go to the same website, johnpassfield.ca, go to journals and then click on the Babe Ruth icon. There's a whole book for free of reflections on not only on Babe Ruth, not only on baseball, not only on sports, not only on society, but on novels and main characters and so on, and King Lears and people under pressure of the present moment and how they think and so on, levels of thought. Many, many thoughts as I was polishing that novel. Lastly, let me just say thank you for watching.